Welcome back, everyone. We are up to lesson 18 of Unit 3, and in this lesson, we are going to review the quadratic formula. You, of course, should know the quadratic formula already. The only difference is the examples that we look at in this particular lesson are going to have complex number solutions. Basically, exactly what we did in the previous lesson, just with completing the square instead of the quadratic formula. So if you forgot, the quadratic formula is what's in green right here. That's in green. And it's a formula you plug into. And in case you forgot, A is the coefficient of the x squared term, B is the coefficient of the x term, and C is the constant term. And the equation must be set equal to 0 in order to be able to use the formula. So this is how you tell what number to plug in for which variable. So for the first one, x squared plus 6x plus 13 equals 0. The first thing I always like to do before plugging into the formula is to identify my a, b, and c values. Okay, so a again is the coefficient of the x squared term. Well, the x squared term is right here, and the coefficient of that is 1. So a is going to be equal to 1. Okay. B is the coefficient of the x term. So the x term is right here. The coefficient is positive 6. And C is the constant term. So the constant term in this case is 13. So when I plug into the formula, I'm going to plug in 1 for A, 6 for B, and 13 for C. So let's do that. So x equals negative b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. Okay? And now we're just going to start simplifying. So x equals negative 6 plus minus square root. 6 squared is 36. And then this is negative 4 times 1 times 13. So negative 4 times 1 times 13. Use a calculator if you need to. So I'm using the one on my phone. Negative 4 times 1 times 13 is negative 52. Divided by 2 times 1. Okay? Let's keep going. So negative 6 plus and minus the square root. Under the square root, I have 36 minus 52. So that's the square root of negative 16 divided by 2. We'll keep going. Okay. The square root of negative 16, we should know how to do with imaginary numbers. We know that the square root of 16 is 4. So the square root of negative 16 is going to be 4i. So this becomes negative 6 plus and minus 4i divided by 2. And then, to simplify this even further, all of these numbers here are even numbers. Even numbers are all divisible by 2. So I'm going to go ahead and divide each of these things by 2 since they're even. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Okay. 4i divided by 2 is 2i. So negative 3 plus and minus 2i. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, but I know, of course, I know anything divided by 1 is itself. So really, I end up with negative 3 plus and minus 2i. Okay, And this right here are my two solutions. So my two solutions are negative 3 plus 2i and negative 3 minus 2i. So those are my two solutions to number 1. Okay. Number 2, same thing. So we have x squared minus 10x plus 50 equals 0. To identify my a, b, and c values, so a is the coefficient of the x squared term, so that's going to be 1. B is the coefficient of the x term, that's going to be negative 10. And c is the constant term, that's going to be 50. So I'm going to plug in 1 for a, negative 10 for b, and 50 for c. So x equals negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. Okay? Now this is really important here. Notice the first part of the quadratic formula is negative b. Okay? Well, what happens if b is already negative? Like in this case, b is already a negative 10. So if b is already negative, then negative b is negative negative 10. Well, that's a double negative, and a double negative makes a positive. So negative negative 10 is positive 10. So that's what will happen if your b value is already negative. It will become a positive when you do the negative b, like right here. So negative negative 10 is positive 10, plus and minus. Okay. Negative 10 squared is negative 10 times negative 10, so that's going to be positive 100. Okay. Negative 4 times 1 times 50. Negative 4 times 1 times 50, that's going to be a negative 200 divided by 2. Let's keep going. So we have 10 plus and minus the square root. 100 minus 200 is negative 100. Divided by 2. So 10 plus and minus square root of negative 100. Square root of negative 100 is going to be 10i divided by 2. And I can do the same thing I did before. These are all even numbers, so I can divide everything by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. Plus and minus 10i divided by 2 is 5i. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. So that gives me a simplified answer of 5 plus and minus 5i. So 5 plus and minus 5i, which means my two solutions are going to be 5 plus 5i and 5 minus 5i. So those are my two solutions to number 2, and that is it for lesson 18.